Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Atlanta History Center. I'm Claire Haley, Vice President of Democracy Initiatives and Author Talks here at the History Center. It's absolutely my pleasure to welcome you to this amazing evening. We're featuring author Ruth Watson, her new book. Yes. Welcome, Ruth.
Thank you.
Her new book is A Right-Worthy Woman. It is available for purchase today. We report to the New York Times bestseller list and all the other lists, so you'll be supporting Ruth. If you purchase a book here tonight, it is 25% off as an added bonus tonight. So get one for you, get one for your friend, get one for Christmas. You'll be really, really ahead of the game. And she will also be happy to sign that for you after the event tonight as well, out in the lobby. She will be in conversation tonight with Vanessa Riley, another really wonderful historical fiction author from here in Atlanta. Ruth, this is not her first book. Her other books include Blackberry Days of Summer and Elderberry Fall, Cranberry Winter, and Strawberry Spring. The musical stage play Blackberry Days is based on her debut novel. She is a recipient of the Caversham Fellowship and Artist and Writers Residency in South Africa, where she published her first children's book in Zulu called Our Secret Bond. She's a freelance writer, a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, has written for Upscale, the AJC, many other publications. She's an adjunct professor, project manager, author, and lives right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Thanks for being here tonight, Ruth.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, she will be in conversation with Vanessa Riley. Vanessa is also a fiction writer. She has written many, many, many books, but in addition to being a novelist, she also has a doctorate in mechanical engineering and a master's in engineering and engineering management from Stanford University. And she also earned degrees from Penn State University in engineering as well. Her books include, many books include Island Queen, which came out several years ago, and her forthcoming book, Queen of Exiles, which is out in just a couple of weeks. So there's that early copy here tonight. She's here tonight with her daughter, which is very exciting.
Who just graduated?
Yes. So congratulations. Headed to college in the fall, which is very exciting. And you can catch her writing from the comfort of her porch in Atlanta with a cup of Earl Grey tea. We will save time for your questions, so be thinking of those as tonight's talk progresses. But please join me in welcoming Ruth Watson and Vanessa Riley.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. And I love what you do with the place. Sounds like you got a promotion since I was last here, so congratulations. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out. We are going to have a great time tonight because we are here to celebrate a wonderful woman, an enormously fabulous book, A Right-Worthy Woman by Ruth P. Watson. And you are sitting with us in this intimate conversation because whenever a woman writes the book of their heart, when they find that passion, nothing is better. And I believe that is what we have in A Right-Worthy Woman. So I have to ask you, Ruth, I am a historical fiction writer, and I look under weeds, in attics, in garages, in archival resources to find that story. And when you find that story, you know you found that story. I found Dorothy Kerwin Thomas of Island Queen on a comic book strip detailing this relationship that she was having with the Prince of Wales. How did you find Maggie Lena Walker? And just for those who haven't read the book yet, tell us who Maggie is.
Well, let me start by telling you how I found Maggie Lena Walker, your first question, and it'll tell you who Maggie is. I found Maggie Lena Walker when I was researching for another novel that I did back. I wrote the book in 2009, and I came across this woman in Richmond, Virginia, Maggie Lena Walker. And at first I thought it was Madam C.J. Walker.
Her cousin.
Yeah, right.
On mama's side.
Yes. And I did some more digging because I'm a curious person. My grandmother used to have me sitting on the porch reading as a child, so her philosophy was an idle mind is a devil's workshop. So to keep from having an idle mind, I dug into I wanted to know who Maggie Lena Walker was because I had not heard of her, not in Virginia history. I'm from Virginia. I had not heard about her in Black history, which I took in high school. So I'm like, who is this woman? And I found out that she was the first female and African-American banker in America. She was the first one to charter a bank in America. And that sort of sparked my interest in her. And I put her in my book, Blackberry Days of Summer, as the lady who comes into the club and always sits at the front and the best table in the club because of her status and her eliteness. And nobody ever asked me, who was this lady? And I would put her in my books. Nobody said anything. Until recently, I turned in a manuscript, and the editor and my agent read it, and they said, who is this person? Is this a real person? I mean, why is there Maggie Lena Walker in here, a banker? Is this a real person? And I said, yes, it really is. So they decided to turn down the manuscript that I sent them. And they asked me to write the story of Maggie Lena Walker. So that's why she's important to me. That's how I found her. By researching Richmond, Virginia, and what was happening in that time period. And she turned out to be one of the best finds I could have ever imagined coming across, because she's like a hidden figure, someone nobody knew about. Mm-hmm. Like I signed a book on last Tuesday when the book was released for Miss Katherine Johnson's daughter. She asked me to send her a book. Somebody came, I signed it to her because she said, I need to meet you because you, just like my mom, who everybody know about, the movie Hidden Figures. Miss Katherine Johnson was a mathematician, and she worked for NASA. Maggie Lena Walker was a banker that had a bank and a president of a bank, but she was one of those people that we knew nothing about. So I had to write her story, and I was compelled to do it, even if they probably hadn't have asked me, but I'm so thankful for my agent, and I'm thankful for my editor, because they saw something nobody else had ever saw.
And it's amazing because
Yes,
you've had her in so many of your other books.
Yes.
Maybe she was like in the background, like.
I think she was. She was.
I mean, she probably was like, "It's about time."
Yeah. Yeah. I've been calling. I've been waving at you for a long time, and she was. And it's just she was. It's like I could never get rid of her. She was always in my thoughts.
Well, she's a persistent woman. I mean, that's why she's here.
Yeah.
You know, you're writing up a woman banker in a time where women couldn't have credit. You still had to have the husband or the brother to go and open accounts to deal in these types of finances. Talk a little bit of how she got her seat at the table.
Well,
without spoilers, because we want everybody to read the book.
Well, she got her seat at the table by being a strategist and understanding that even though somebody may not like you, or you may not fit in with those people that you're trying to do business with, it's still worth your effort to try to establish a relationship with them so that you can get what you need. And that's what she did. I mean, she talked to governors, senators, races. She didn't care. She didn't mind the name calling, because in her mind, there was a goal in mind. And her goal was to be someone who was self-sufficient and economically sound. And she wanted her community to function the same way. So sometimes I think, when I think about Maggie Lena Walker, I think about us today and how we do business. We tend to let a one no keep us from moving forward. We tend to say, well, I don't think this person liked me, they're not going to like me, I'm not going to do anything. And those people sometimes, they may not like you, but they may end up respecting you because of what you're trying to do. And I think she was able to do that in a time when black people, or as we were called back then, colored people, were not supposed to do anything. Not just women, but nobody. But she had it in her mind, and she had been around real strong women, raised around strong women, and she believed that she could do things. And each time that she made a step towards it, she made sure it happened. And Miss Pearl Clegg wrote something, and I like to always inspirited. It's inspirited in her. And we should have things, there are things everybody in this room want to do that we're afraid to do. Fear comes in place. It stops us from making a move. It keeps you from talking to people you want to talk to because you're not sure how they're going to receive you. It was 1903. Can you imagine a black woman in 1903 with the audacity to talk to white men about a bank? Can you imagine that? Could you imagine her talking to black men about a bank? I mean, she just took these steps that nobody could possibly take. And that's probably why we don't hear much about her, because she was totally out of place. But it's okay to be out of place sometimes, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking 30 years since we were free. Even counting Juneteenth with that little slight delay. 30 years plus we were free, and this woman is coming from a background of enslaved parents, grandparents, and now she's owning a bank. And one of the things that I really loved about this novel is how setting is also a character in this book. So you make us feel Reconstruction, the tension, the plight, the joy that we are free, we can do these things, we can be in Congress, but yet the danger is still there. Particularly, and you open us right there where she's confronted with her father is known for going to work at a certain time and coming back at a certain time, and he doesn't come back at that certain time. How did you choose to make us feel Reconstruction all the way through the Great Depression in writing Maggie's story?
Because it was important for everybody reading the book to know that it was a time period, there was a time where nothing could be trusted and no one. And I had to start off by just asking the reader to get to know her, get to know where she came from, get to know her family, get to understand what bothers a 12-year-old when they find out that their father has been murdered, but they say he drowned.
Okay, she just gave y'all a hint. Buy the book, you'll know the rest of the story. That's a spoiler, girl. Come on now.
Okay, but thank you, Vanessa, for keeping me on task. Thank you. You said you would do that. Thank you. I appreciate you.
No problem. Back to your story.
But I had to come up with something so that I wanted the readers to like her and to understand that she was going through some things in her mind. And those things had to be dealt with. And so I started at a place of turmoil, a place of total dysfunction for them. Because if I had started in a good place, it would be a happy-go-lucky book. Mm-hmm. Oh, she just, was privileged. Mm-hmm. She had an opportunity that nobody else had an opportunity to do. But I had to let you know who she was and what made her strong and how she had to watch her mom and other women, take care of things that they normally wouldn't have to do on their own. I mean, we do that all the time now, but we got television, we got cell phones, we got people that really look out for us, we have neighbors. She didn't have any of that. So they had to all of a suddenly deal with some issues and hopefully come out victoriously.
No, it's a marvelous way to begin. When I was writing Island Queen, there was a debate with my editor on where to start the book. She wanted it to start at the manumissions table. That's the point where if you're an enslaved person, you have the money to be free, it's all in front of lawyers, and you pay the money, documents are signed, and you're free. But I was like, we need to show her journey before that. Even though it's going to show some of the brutality and the pain of the past, you don't know how much that victory is if you haven't seen where she came from. Mm-hmm. I was right. And that's how we told Island Queen. But that leads me to this next point that we should talk about is when you're dealing in Black history, there are victories, there are highs, there are lows, there are pain. For one, we cannot ignore the pain. We cannot make it less than what it was, because that is a disservice to every reader. If you try and pretend, slavery was good. We had 4 squares. And no, you've got to show it. You've got to show it in its entirety to its perspective. But you can't show, I don't believe in dwelling in pain. I want to show the victory. I want to show us moving forward. I want to show that why us being in this particular position is better than where we came from. So on this path, as you're doing research, there are good facts you find out about Maggie, there are bad facts, and there's probably some ugly ones about her community, about the racism she may have faced. How did you make the decision of what you were going to include and what you weren't going to include in this book?
You know something? This book is not even thick enough to include all the things that she did. My contract said to write 90,000 words. For Maggie Lena Walker, I could have written 180,000 words, because this lady had done so many things and had overcome so many obstacles in her life that 90 pages, 90,000 words does not do her any justice. We have 304 pages here. If I had my choice, it would be 608 pages, because there was so much history that I excluded from the book. And what I tended to do is to mention pieces of it so that you, the reader, will want to know more about her, and that you will go and look in the author notes and see where I found this information and do some of your own research. Because I think what happens is, once you learn about her, you sort of feel like you could do some things too that you've been wanting to do. And we have to always expand on what's most important. And I chose the things that was most important. The bank was important. The most important, the first female on Wall Street, period. We say African American, but she was the first female. I can't find anybody else that chartered a bank that was female other than Maggie Lena Walker in 1903. So she was the first female, but she was also the first African American to start her own department store that sold quality goods. I mean, she competed with, if anybody's been to Richmond, Virginia in here, I'm sure there's some people been to Richmond, right? Yes. You grew up there. So you know about Tallhammers and Millen Roads. I worked at both places in high school. So I worked at Tallhammers and I worked at Millen Roads. I love Millen Roads. That's my favorite. But I'm going to tell you, she saw them. And she saw the quality of clothes. You know, it was better than Macy's. Maybe not as good as Saks, but maybe in between there. And she wanted the same thing for her people. So she created an emporium. And she went to New York and found the same vendors that Tallhammers used and Millen Roads used, and had them to be her merchants for her corporation. But of course, that was not long-lived. So but you need to read the book to find the rest of it out. And what happened, that's a spoiler if I go any further, right?
Yeah, that's right. Okay. I gotta hold you honest. But keep going, keep going.
And so, understanding that she had done, this lady was somewhat different than anybody I've ever read about or heard about. She had so much faith in God. And we call him the universe. For some of us, we say universe. There's different names that you call the person that you praise. But this lady had so much faith that it became her, I guess it was just the way she had to function. She never doubted herself, nor did she doubt her God. And she was able to make things happen that other people didn't. There's a thing called fear. Fear is probably the worst thing in the world. Because fear keeps you from, it prevents you from having relationships. It prevents you from moving forward. And I always praise, I say fear over and over again, because this lady lacked fear. And if she had any fear, she gave it to God and not to man. Because she had men telling her, oh, you know, you acting like a man, you know, you don't act like a woman. Men telling her husband, oh, you married a man, you didn't marry a woman. She had people saying all kinds of things to her, all kind of insults. And she was catching it on both sides because she was mixed race. Don't forget that. So where did she fit? Where did she fit? The lady took an awful lot of abuse, but she kept moving. And I can tell you why I think some of that happened, but I don't know if I would be I don't think I would be spoiling it.
But give me a little bit, just a little bit.
I'll just give you a
little taste.
It doesn't hurt to grow up during the Confederacy and during the Civil War, well, be born during the Civil War, but to grow up in a house of a Union spy, that doesn't hurt. This lady's spying out there for the Union.
Sound like she need a book.
She does need a book. She definitely need a book, for real. I mean, that lady needs a book. it doesn't hurt to see somebody like her sell her soul for the freedom of the North, okay? In the monumental Confederate South, because that's what Richmond is. It is the home of the Confederacy. And it doesn't even faze her that her mother was a laundress. You know, your father is no longer available. What you gonna do? You know, I know I sometimes have gotten to a place where I didn't have any cash. I'm like wondering, like, how am I gonna do this? They didn't have the time to think about it. They just had to make something happen. And her mother made it happen. She created a business. So when you watch people move like that in your life, it has to inspire you. Mm-hmm. It has to sit, you know, it like seeps in and say, okay, look, I've heard stories of this woman who was the Union spy. And you're from Richmond. I know you might have heard of Elizabeth Van Lew. Well, you must know who she is. Elizabeth Van Lew was a Union spy during the Civil War. They grew up, her mother grew up in Elizabeth Van Lew's home. Mm-hmm. You got to understand the dynamics behind her life. So when her mother's telling her these stories about this lady who didn't fear being ridiculed, and then her mother come out and say, listen, we're going to have a business. We're not going to go down to I don't have a husband any longer. I don't have nobody. It's just us. We're going to live and we're going to make it. So when you have this surrounding you and encompassing you, it's like all good women. When you have a tribe of women around you, they give you good advice and love on you when things are not so well. Her tribe were her memories of what could be done and what could happen. And she made it happen.
Now, you mentioned a few things that weren't spoilers, but we're going to go back on. You have this woman who had no fear. You have a woman who is God-centered. Mm-hmm. Can you describe that husband and the house, the family unit? That's also part of it, because, you know, you get this woman and you have people saying she's man-like because she's aggressive or ambitious. What is the softer side of Maggie? What is that home life like?
Well, home life is this. She was blessed, I think, to be married to a man who was as confident as she was.
That's a blessing.
That is a blessing. Because he had a business of his own. His family had a business. As a matter of fact, his family did very well when she met him. So she already had somebody that she met and married somebody who wasn't intimidated by her success or her ideas. Because at that time, she wasn't successful. She was a mere school teacher. But she was good at that in teaching her students about economics, because that was important to her. But she had bigger ideas and bigger places she wanted to go. And she had a husband and children. She had children along the way. And they understood that too. The importance of giving to your community and giving back to the community. And how if we get into Jackson Ward in Richmond, Virginia, was like, I guess we could say was similar to, is it Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma? where it was a community of well-established people, people with careers. She helped them to get money, to fund more businesses, to open up, to use your God-given talent to do something. We don't use our God-given talents today. We know that we can do things. I don't use mine either until maybe now people see me, that I giggle and laugh so much, people think I'm a joke. I do. I have fun, and now that I'm serious, people are like, is that the same girl? It's the same girl. But we got to always understand that even though there was Jim Crow, and I think there's a question you had for me that I read about Reconstruction, and how did she come up from Reconstruction into the Great Depression? Mm-hmm. How can you sustain that?
Mm-hmm. The same energy, the same passions, because it's like the world is getting right, now the world is going back to wrong. And now economic crisis, and I'm a banker, so I'm seeing people's livelihoods go away.
Yes.
How do you deal with that? Or how did Maggie deal with that? Because I know I'd be like, ah!
When Maggie dealt
401k.
with it, she looked beyond. She looked beyond the circle, and she said, "Okay, I'm in Richmond, Virginia, but I can take people's money all over the country." Maggie got in her car with her family, and she drove up the East Coast over to the West. And she asked people to put money in her bank. And they did just that.
Now, hold on. This is slightly a spoiler, but you're telling me a woman gets in the car, rolls up to people on different coasts, and says, give me money, and they did.
Yes, but you got to understand.
That's a heck of a PowerPoint.
Yes, it is. But let me tell you this. She didn't do it by herself. Mm-hmm. You got to understand, you must know that there was a man called W.E.B. Du Bois. And there was a man, George Washington Carver. And there was her best friend, Mary McLeod Bethune. Mm-hmm. And when you are surrounded and you consult with some of the best people, the best heads who are trying to make a way for African Americans in this country at that time period, you feel pretty confident that you're gonna do it. And even when she wanted a vacation, she said, I'll just go down to Florida and hang out with Mary. Mary McLeod Bethune was about 11 years younger than she was. But that was her friend. And Mary was down there creating schools. W.E.B. Du Bois was out there talking to people about the Great War and how he expected people to act. He and George Washington Carver and George Carter G. Woodson, they were button heads. People were talking.
Well, let's go into that if you can without talking. Because W.E.B. Du Bois did some really great things, but he also said that the black female's role was to be in the house to support the black man. Maggie got out the house.
But you got to understand W.E.B. Du Bois. He loved Mary McLeod Bethune. Mm-hmm. Am I right, Dr. Sheila? Mm-hmm. He loved her. He loved certain people. So even if you're telling a few women this, you're not telling every woman that, the women that he saw that were doing things, because, he was talking about the talented 10th, the 10% of the talented. Those were the educated people. And then we had George Washington Carver, who was talking about get a skill. learn something, learn how to make something with your hands. So they were on two ends of the pendulum. But when it came to the progression of black people in America, they were all on the same page. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why he probably said that for his, certain women.
And he wrote a couple pamphlets, but
yeah,
but you
did.
said Maggie could deal with all kind of people.
No,
so I
she
could
could
see her sitting there like,
but
and I still need this.
Yeah, but you got to understand that she didn't just do it by herself. Mm-hmm. I think I said that he was great friends with her great friend, Mary McLeod Bethune. See, we work through people to get things done. Sometimes it doesn't work for one person, but because you have a relationship, it's going to make it better. And that's exactly what happened. And they had many meetings at her house. W.E.B. Du Bois came in. He gave her his opinion. They had good friendships. They had great food. They ate. They had a glass of port wine.
It's probably the best port wine.
Yes.
Because this is Maggie.
Yeah, well, all of them, of course you want the best because you're doing the best for the community. You're not going to just, well, you probably made the wine yourself. Maybe there's a possibility that they made their own wine, but it was the best they could make at that
Pretty
time.
sure she imported it from New York, because the woman I read in this book, she imported it from New York.
Maybe not.
She wasn't doing it, unless she owned a winery. Now, if she owned a winery, then I'm there with you.
Well, I would tell you this. She had the best because she could afford the best, but there was a time when she couldn't afford the best. And so she drank and she ate what was there for her. And it's like us, any of us. When we make money, we change our clothes. We go buy something different. We eat a steak instead of whatever, bologna sandwich or something, We do something differently. Our goals change and our area of influence changes, the people we're around. I would want you to read this book because not only was she a banker, but she closed and shut down a trolley company in Richmond, Virginia. Can you imagine that? The woman was bad. She was a bad-ass woman. And we need to know about her. The whole world needs to know about her because of the things that she's done, not just for us African Americans, or we African Americans, I think I said that wrong, but because she did it for everybody.
Okay. All right. One really quick question. You're writing a powerful black woman. There are so many tropes about strong women, about us being superheroes. And sometimes it becomes like we can feel no pain, we have to keep going, the house is burning, but we've got to keep marching, we got to keep doing. How did you balance and give us such a complete picture and not just settled into these stereotypes that come from truth, because we've had to be strong, we've had to be superhuman, we've had to keep moving. How do you balance that and make her fleshed out and feel real?
Well, one of the ways I balanced that out was, I know it sort of sounds sort of superficial, but I channeled her energy. And I really did this. And when I wrote late at night, I said, Miss Maggie, talk to me. Because everybody don't believe in the spirit world, but I do.
I do, but I don't try to talk to them.
I do. I said, Miss Maggie, talk to me. Tell me what to write. Let me write your story the way it really happened. And I did a lot of research to make sure that what I was writing was validated. And Simon & Schuster did exactly that. They went back and they had their historians to validate what I'd written, because they wanted it not only as a book of fiction, but as a book of facts. And I just asked to, what kind of personality does it take to do the things that you did? Why did you act the way you did? How could you let this stuff roll off of you and not get angry, so angry that you want to hurt somebody? How do you do that? So I had to ask her to come to me. I didn't see a person, but my thoughts were clear. And my mind was clear. I'm not saying that somebody came and sat there.
Girl. We know.
I just want to make that clear. I'm not crazy or anything.
You're unveiling the writer process. So you guys are getting a sneak peek in how we do the things we do.
Yeah, and when I went there, Jennifer and I went to visit the St. Luke Penny Bank about a month or two ago. And I knew she was there. I knew she felt me. Because the minute I saw it again, tears rolled down my eyes. It wasn't because I was mad. I just knew that Miss Maggie was happy. Because I'd written a book about how she really functioned. She did not function like a normal person would function, who want to fight, get mad, get angry, take the words people call them and just internalize them. She let those words just float off her shoulder and kept moving. Because in her heart, even to the day she died, she was still fighting for the rights of African American women to not be domesticated and stay in your house and do this, that, and other, for other women as well. Because even though there's a lady named Miss Tallhammer in the book, Miss Tallhammer had to look good for Mr. Tallhammer. She couldn't do the things she wanted to do. Miss Maggie spoke for all women because all women were suppressed. And still are in some cases. So I have to have a clear head to channel this stuff. And I really went deep with her. I went as deep as I could. And I knew when I wrote the book that it was going to be a good book because I put every bit of me into it. I did every bit of research I could possibly do. Because I wanted her to shine, to get her just due, get the praise and honor that she needs to be, as Miss Pearl say, in the pantheon of other history makers across America. And that's what I in turn tried to do.
Yeah, and before we open up to questions, I just want to celebrate the last lines of this book. Certainly, child, us colored folks are fighters, and colored girls will fight to the end for our family, our economic standing, and our social freedom. We will never give up. I want to applaud Ruth Watson for this beautiful book, A Right Worthy Woman.
Thank you. Thank you.